Hello and welcome to the View from the IMF preview. I'm James King, the banker's Middle East and Africa editor, and I'm joined today by Wael Ziada, the head of research for EFG Hermes. Wael, thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Now, looking at the Middle East and North Africa today, obviously the region is in quite a bit of trouble. We see conflict in Syria and Iraq. Obviously there's trouble in Yemen brewing. Is the region as a whole still an attractive investment proposition?
Well, look, the region has passed through rough times in the past, and investors coming into this region are prepared for that, and they understand that whenever there is risk, there are opportunities. Investors has become more resilient, I would say, to what has been happening in the past, and this is evident in the performance of some of the markets in the region that were stellar. They had stellar performance, like the UAE, like Saudi, like Egypt. You still had opportunities. We had at EFG Hermes a very decent pipeline of IPOs that was subscribed multiple times and still have made very good returns. So in whole, investors come to this region, they understand the risk reward, and that's why we still see a lot of interest in the region today.
Now, you picked out in particular the UAE and Egypt there as well. Why are these two markets so attractive right now?
Well, I think because, I mean, it's just not UAE and Egypt. I would add to that Saudi. I would also, to a lesser extent, say perhaps Qatar. Because these markets, specifically the UAE, Egypt and Saudi, offer a very diversified economy and opportunities as well. But obviously the dynamics of the economies are different. If you look, for instance, at Saudi, it's still very much oil-based, and hence the decline in oil prices will result this year in a cut in the expenses and investment outlook, and this is what the market hasn't been doing very well since the beginning of the year. But the flip side of that is that it has left many stocks undervalued, and right now investors are saying, okay, now maybe it's the time to come and investigate some of these stocks. On the other hand, if you look at the UAE, it has managed to diversify its economy brilliantly in the last 10 years. So it's not dependent at all today in the oil, especially Dubai. There is tourism, there is services, financial services, and what have you. And this is, again, why it is a very good opportunity for investors. Egypt, on the other side, is a totally different dynamics. It's a country coming out from a lot of political conflict in the last 4 years, finally starting to see some stability, and hence is offering opportunity in terms of the restructuring of the economy. The amount of reform that needs to take place offers a lot of opportunity, and this is what investors in emerging markets know. Now, if you look also at Egypt today, most of, I would say, the problems that Egypt had with its current account and its trade balance had to do with the energy and commodity prices. Now, today, energy and commodity prices is obviously ending a super cycle that lasted for almost 30 years, and prices are coming down. So that's going to be very favorable for Egypt, and it's time to start building probably on that and some industrial base.
Okay. And are you seeing these non-oil exporting economies taking this opportunity to enact much needed reforms?
Well, they are, I would say, they are today at a state of a surprise at how fast all of that has happened. It's in less than 12 months, oil came down by 50–60% from its peak in the last few years. Commodity prices are starting to come down. Everybody's trying to make sense what's happening in China. So it's taken reformists and government by surprise. So I cannot say today that these are starting to build on this, but eventually they should start to build on this, because this is the opportunity. If you add to that, for instance, the massive gas discovery that Egypt just made, 30 trillion cubic feet, with the Italian company Eni, that could change the face of many industries in the country once you start the commercial production on that one.
Okay, and well, a final question. We saw the agreement achieved recently with Iran and the major world powers. What are the implications of that agreement, do you think, over the longer term for the wider region?
I think geopolitically the region is changing, and that's very obvious, but obviously that's the topic of another meeting. But if we look at the immediate implications of this, I think you are today opening a big country with significant population into the entire world. So you will see some demand flowing to the rest of this region and some rise in commercial and economic activity that will have an overflow on the rest of the region. Think about many Iranian businessmen who will want to build bases in the UAE to exploit its fantastic offering of financial services, which could help them trade the entire region. Think of them investing in countries all the way from the Gulf till the ocean. So I think there are more opportunities on an economic and a commercial level, but obviously there is a lot of political issues that need to be sorted out before we move into this phase.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your time today.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much.